Aboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Starting with the new Mishnah on Daf Tez Zayin Amud Beis. The Mishnah comes back to what it stated in the previous Mishnah, that there are 13 Hishtachavoyos that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Mishnah, Heichon Hayu Hishtachavoyos Ha'elu. Where were these different Hishtachavoyos bowing down taking place? Now, bowing down refers to completely on the ground. Where were they taking place in the Beis HaMikdash? The Mishnah explains, Arba B'tzofoin, 4 on the north side of the Azara, Ve'arba B'doroim, and 4 on the south side on the Azara, Shalosh B'mizrach, 3 on the east, Ve'beis B'marav, and 2 to the west. Keneged Shloisha Asar Sha'arim, these 13 correspond to the 13 different gates that one can enter. At each place where he enters, he sees the grandeur of the Beis HaMikdash, and he prostrates himself in order to then display gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for his beautiful Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah goes on to say, explaining each of these, Droimis Smuchin Lamarov, the south that is closest to the west, Shar HaElyon, the first one is the Shar HaElyon. That is the one that's the uppermost, since it was built on a slope. So therefore, the highest point was the most western side of the south, the southwestern. Shar HaDelek, to the right of that, is the Shar of the Delek. That's where they bring through that Shar, that gate of the Azara, the wood, for to be burned on the Mizbeach. Shar HaBecharois, next to that, to the right, is the gate of the Becharois, where they would lead the Becharos animals for the carbon. Shar HaMayim, next to that, is also then called Shar HaMayim. These are the 4 on the southern side. V'lama nikra shmo Shar HaMayim. Why is the latter one, the one that's all the way on the southeastern side, called Shar HaMayim? 2 opinions, says the Mishnah. Sheboy machnisin sluchis shel nisuch hamayim bechag, because that's when a flask, that's where they take the flask of water that was brought from a spring outside of the Beis HaMikdash through this gate of the Azara for the days of Sukkot, where the water was put as a libation on the Mizbeach. The Mishnah now brings another opinion on top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Oimer, Boy hamayim mipakim, va'asidim liyois yoitzim mitachas mifton habayis. That's where the water would trickle down, and in the future, in the Messianic Mashiach times, it will go forth like the opening through the mifton of the bayis, the threshold of the bayis. The Gemara will explain this statement at length. The Mishnah goes on to say, if we now go to the corresponding gates that are in the Azara, this time to the north, corresponding to those that we just listed, the 4 on the south, then we're going to start from the northwestern side. The first one is Shar Yechenya. Shar Yechenya is referring to the gate of Yechenya. Yechenya was the king that was exiled by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha, and before he left, he first paid homage to the Beis HaMikdash, and then he went and he was taken through that gate. Therefore, it's called in his name. Shar HaKarbin, the next one to the right of that, is called Shar HaKarbin. The one to the right is Shar HaNoshim, where women, if they wanted to be present, to come closer to where their carbon was being brought, then they would stand by that Shar. Shar HaShir, where the instruments were brought for the Levim. That was instruments that were brought through this Shar. V'lama nikra Shar Shmo Shar Yechanya. The Mishnah itself asks, why was that first of the northern gates called Shar HaNechenya, Yechenya? Shebo Yatza Yechenya Begalusoi. That's where he left to Galus. Shebe Mizrach, we go to the Mizrach of the Azara. Shar Nikanor, the great gates of Nikanor, were copper gates. The famous story about the Shar Nikanor, which is presented somewhere else in Shas, that he was Moiser Nefesh to bring these gates from Alexandria. He went to hire craftsmen in Alexandria to fashion beautiful gates, and they finally completed them, and he brought them on a boat. There was stormy seas, and they insisted to throw one of these heavy doors off to lighten the boat, and they did so. Then Nicanor was terribly distressed, and they saw that the storm was continuing, and the boat was still in danger. They insisted on throwing the second door, to which Nicanor, he pleaded with them that it should not be thrown out, and indeed the storm subsided. Meanwhile, he was still distressed that the first door was thrown out to the sea. The Gemara says a nace took place, and when they arrived in Akko, the second door, meaning the first one that was thrown out, was underneath the boat. So both doors made it to the port of Akko. And he donated them to the Beis HaMikdash. This is Shar Nicanor, again on the east side, the main entranceway into the Azara. And the Mishnah says, Shnei Pashpashin Hayu Loi. There were two types of smaller entranceways that were built in as gateways to this greater gate of Nicanor. Echad miyamino ve'echad mismol, one to the right, one to the left. They didn't want to open the big gates of Nicanor. They can open up these small gates that were hewn into these doors, these great big doors of Nicanor, right and to the left. The Shnaim, the Mishnah concludes, b'marav lo haya lahen shem. The two additional gates that are on the west side, they don't have a name. Says the Gemara, Masnisin Abba Yoisa ben Yochanan he Damar Keneged Yud Gilmo Sha'orim. This is the opinion of Abba Yoisa ben Yochanan, who says that there were 13 different gates of the Azara, and therefore the 13 Hishtachavayos correspond to these 13 gates. Again, when each time one appears by one of those gates, he makes another bowing down, displaying his gratitude towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu for making such a beautiful Beis HaMikdash. Ask the Gemara Baram, however, Kerabon and Shiva Shorim Hayu Bazar, there are only 7 gates in the Azara. Then we know there are 13 bowing downs. So where do we get these 13 bowing downs? If there are only 7 gates, according to the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, like that it was taught, that we learned over there, there were 13 breaches in what's called the Soreg, the fence that was surrounding the Azara. Boy Shepurtzum Malche Yavon, the Greeks who made these breaches, the Chozu v'Gadrum b'nei Chashmonoi, the b'nei Chashmonoim, ultimately they rebuilt them. The Gozu Kinegdom Yud Gimel Vishtachavoyos, and they enacted that there should be 13 bowing downs corresponding to these 13 breaches. Says the Gemara, based on that which the Mishnah had told us, that the Shar Hamayim is called, according to the second opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, based on the pasuk of the Messianic times. The Gemara now darshans this pasuk and explains. Ksiv, it says, "V'hoya bayoim hahu yetzu mayim chayim miyushalayim." In that day there will be waters that are mayim chayim, from fresh spring, that will emanate from Yerushalayim. Tani, it states in the following brayso, Mi beis kodesh kadoshim ad haparoiches bekarnei silai ukilai. Here talking about that it started with a small little bit of water, just like the antennas of silai vikilai that are very, very small, tremendously thin. That went until the paroiches, when it emanated from the kodesh kadoshim to the paroiches. Mina paroiches ad mizbeach hazov, into the Heichal, the Kodesh, it was Kekarne HaChagovim, slightly more water, the antennas of Chagovim, of grasshoppers. Mimizbeach Azov ad Azoros, Kechut Shel Shesi. It went from the golden Mizbeach, the inner Mizbeach, to the Azoros. Then it got a little bit more water, and that was like the chut of a shesi string, which is the vertical strings on a weave. Min ha'azoros ad mifton habayis kechut shel orev or erev. They were from the azoros to the threshing hold of the Beis Hamikdash. To the that is going to be the thickness of the horizontal string in the weave. Mikan ve'elach kimipi hapach. From there onwards, like the opening of a kli, of a pach, of a flask. Ksiv, it's written, v'hinei mayim mefakhin min hakosef hayamanis. It'll be water that's going to be from like the pach, it's going to be flowing like from the pach, the flask of the right side. B'tzeis ha'ish kodim v'kav biyado. A man will be coming from the east with a measuring stick in his hand. Vayomed elef be'ama v'ya'amvirenu b'mayim mei afsim. Afsoim. It says then he will measure 1,000 amos and he will pass the water from afsoim. What is that referring to? Ad karsoilo, until his ankles. Vayomed elef, the pasuk goes on to say, v'ya'avirenu b'mayim mei berkayim. Ad birchaya. It says he will then measure another 1,000 amos, and it will pass to his knees. Vayomed elef vayavrinu me masnayim ad masnaya. He will measure another 1,000 amos, and it will go toward his waist. Mikan ve'ilach vayomed elef nachal asher lo yuchal la'avor. Then it will be so much water. He'll measure another 1,000 amos, and he won't even be able to pass by. Afilu bilibironin gedola ena yechol. Even a big boat will not be able to then pass by. Lavor boy. My time, and what is the reason? The pasuk says, "V'tzi adir lo ya'avirenu." It says that a great, strong boat will not be able to pass it. Why? Ki go hamayim mei sochoy. Because of the waters, the waters that will be swelling up. Mahu meisechoy. What does it mean, meisechoy? Miloshut rather, from being able to swim. Not only swim, but even allowing a boat to pass through. Rav Chuna ba'asrin koru l'shita sachvana. He supports this in saying that's indeed what was called over there, sachvana, referring to that indeed it was swimming. Upeiras yada bekiraboy kasher yifares ha soicha lischos. Another support that he spread out his hands inside as if he was spreading his arms to then swim. Mahu lischos, what does it mean? Lischos, to swim. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Bun, mayin de mismalalim be'alma, like waters that were spoken about in the world. Ksiv, it's written by Yirmiyahu, yeh makor niftach l'beis David u'liyosh v'Yushalayim l'chatas v'lenida. It says in the pasuk, on that day, during times of Mashiach, it says that there'll be a spring that will open to the house of Yehuda and to those who will dwell in Yerushalayim for both mechatos and for nida. That means it'll work to then be used for the mechatos that are mixed with the ash of the para aduma to then purify somebody who has a tumas mace, and also to purify the nida. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yonason mi beis David va'ad yosh v'Yushalayim ksheim l'nido l'chatos. This will be kosher for both purifying the nida from her tuma as well as from those who are tamei meis with mechatos. Mikan ve'ilach, from there onwards, meitarovis heim ksheim l'nido psulim l'mechatos. However, afterwards it's going to be mixed together with the rainwater, and therefore it will only be satisfactory for the nida, but not for the mechatos. Mechatos have to come from a spring, and this is now going to be mixed with rainwater. It'll be then only sufficient for the nida. Rabbi Elazar mi beis David ve'ad yosh v'Yushalayim ksheim l'nida ulachatos. He says it'll be kosher until that point. Nida chatas, he agrees. However, mikan ve'elach make hatafri sois hein. These are slopey waters, and therefore psulin l'nida ulachatos. Not only are they posted for chatos because they get mixed with the rainwater, but even those waters that are normally a mikvah mayim that are suffice to purify the nida. Here, since they're going to be moving, they will not even be mutter to be used for the nida. See if it says in the pasuk, going back to the pasuk we said before, the flow of the water. Vayomer Elai Hamayim Ha'ela Yotzim El Haglila Hakadmoino. This is going to be going out to the Glila Hakadmoino. Ze Yam Shel Samchu. This is referring to the Yam Shel Samchu. V'yardu El Harova. The pasuk says it'll go down to the Harova. Ze Yam Shel Tiveria. Ubo Hayama, and it'll come to the Yam. What's that referring to? Ze Yam Hamelach. El Hayama Hamutzoim, to the expanding sea. Ze Yam HaGodol is referring to the Yam HaGodol. V'lama Nikra Shmoi Mutzoim. Why is he referring to the name as expanding? Says the Gemara, because Keneged Shtei Pe'omim Sheyotza, corresponding to 2 times that it went out. Echod Bedor Enosh, one when it went out to the Dor Enosh, the Atlantic Sea, the Yam HaGodol. Ve'echad Bedor Hafloga, one when it had to then go out to the Dor Hafloga, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished them both. Rabbi Lazar b'shem Rabbi Chanino barishono yotza ad Calabria, Yoshnia yotza ad Kifei Barbaria. The first one went out to Calabria, that's an area by Italy. The second one went out in the area by France, referring to the Barbary coast. Rabbi Acha b'shem Rabbi Chanino barishono yotza ad Kifei Barbaria, v'shnia yotza ad Akoi v'ad Yafoi. However, the second one went out until Akon Yafoy, which is of course on the coast of Eretz Yisrael. Ad poi tovoy v'lo toisif. The pasuk says, until here it will come and not add. So it's a play on the words ad poi. Poi also means koi. So ad koi refers to Akoi. Ze ad Akoi tovo v'lo toisif. And it also sounds like ad poi, sounds like Yafoy, ad poi. Upoi, Yoshi's begon kalecha. Ufoi here is referring to Yaakov, because it says Ufoi, that your waves will then also show like her majesty. Ad Yafoi Oshi's going kalecha. The Gemara now goes back and says Nicha Yama Rabbe v'Yama the Milcha b'Shul Miskan. It's very well to say the Yam Rabbah, the great sea, as well as the Yam HaMelach, they're going to turn and become sweet. That is very well in the Messianic times. That's the prophecy. But Yama de Tiveria, Yama de Samcho, the Gemara asks, but these 2 Yamim, they're already sweet. What's the prophecy and the greatness about them becoming sweet? They're already sweet. Answer the Gemara, L'Rabbo is Dagosom. It comes to include the fish that swim in those seas. The Kosiv Beit written, Lemino Tiye Dagosom. It says the mina will be their dog, to teach you lemine minim, different types of species. Tiye dagosam, they will have these fish, different types of fish. Tani Omar Bishim Ben Gamliel, he comes to support that there'll be many types of fish. And he says, Maise shalachti litzidoin. I will tell you a Maise, I went to a place called Sidoin, and this is already a reflection of what's going to be. There might be more than 300 types of fish on the plate. The Gemara goes on to say, V'nerpu hamayim bitzosov. First it says that the water will become sweetened. Then it says that their swamps and their pools will not become sweetened. Lemelach nidnu, they're going to be used for melach, for salt. See, the Gemara asks, V'nerpu hamayim. It says the waters are going to become sweetened. Va'at amis, and you say, V'lo yirpum hamayim, the water will not become sweetened. Gemara answers, Makom hu ushmoi v'lo yarafu. It says that is a place as a reference that it's referring to, and its name is V'lo Yirafu. Why is it Lo Yirafu? Because it'll be designated to then acquire salt for the needs of the salt. So those will be stationed for their salt. Ksiv, it's written in the pasuk, V'al hanochal yale al svosoi. It'll go up to its edge. Mizeh mizeh kol eitz meichel. From this into this, all of the fruit trees, lo yibol alehu, the leaves will not wither, v'lo yito imperio, and its fruit will not desist. L'chadoshav iboker. The pasuk goes on to say, Mi meimov, ki meimov min hamikdosh, hema yotzim, because there will be waters that will go out from the mikdosh. V'haya puriyoy l'maichel, v'aleyu l'srufa, and its fruit will be for food, for eating, and its leaves will be for refuah, for a trufa, for medicine. The Gemara now explains. Omar Rabbi Yehuda. Tani Omar Rabbi Yehuda. Lefisha aba oilam hazeh tvua oise l'shisha chadashim. Since in this world tvua requires 6 months to ripen, v'ilan oise l'shnei masar chodesh, and trees require a full year. Aval la'osi lavoi hatvua oise l'chodesh echod. Instead of being 6 months, it will be 1 month. V'ilan oise l'shnei chadashim. Instead of being 1 year, it will be 2 months. My time, what's the reason? L'chod shav yivoker. It says over here that their months, in plural, the minimum would be 2. It will be yivoker, it will become then ripened. It will yield fruit. Amar Rabbi Yosi said, Lefisha ba'olam hazeh hatvu oise l'shisha chadashim. It's 6 months for tvua to then develop. V'ilan oise liyubeis chodesh. Aval la'osi lavoi hatvu oise l'tes vav yoim. Instead of being a whole 6 months, it'll be 15 days. V'ilan oiseh l'chodesh echad, and only be 1 month for a fruit tree. Shekein matzinu she'osos hatvu b'mei yoyel. That's what we found as a precedent in the days of Yoyel, that it only required 15 days. L'chamisha asar yoim v'kar mimena ha'omer. It was brought on. There was rains that rained, both the first and the last rains in the beginning of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And they were able to bring the Omer on the second day of Pesach, 15 days later. Because it says, the Bnei Tzion, they rejoiced in you Hashem, because you gave them a teacher of righteousness. And you provide for them Geshem, Geshem, More Umalchush, in other words, the normal season has a early rain, which is all the way in the beginning of the season of Cheshvan. Then the last rain is only the beginning of up until the beginning of Nisan, and here both of them took place in the beginning of Nisan. And nonetheless, again, there was enough. It produced tvua to be able to then provide for the Korban Omer on Tes Zayin of Nisan. What does Rabbi Yosi then do with the pasuk l'chadashav is mashma plural? And he said, indeed, it will only require 1 month for fruit trees to develop. Says Gemara, b'chol chodesh v'chodesh yeh b'vaker. It doesn't mean l'chadashav it'll take 2 months or as a minimum, or only 2 months, but rather it means every month and month it will produce. Ve'aleyu l'trufa, the end of the pasuk says, and the leaves will be for a trufa, for a remedy, for a medicine. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, tarpe motzitz alei. It says it'll be like a food when you suck its leaf. Tarpe from the Lashon with a test. Tarpe, teref. Yusraf u'mezayna. Usraf u'mezayna means food. It'll be a food when a person sucks its leaf. Rav Shmuel chadamar lahatir peh shelamalon. V'chadamar lahatir peh shelamalon. They darshan the word that it says trufa lahatir peh. It's a combination of those words, and therefore lahatir peh lamalon. One says it's to open the mouth above, and one says to open the mouth below. Open the mouth above gives a person an appetite. Somebody who was lacking an appetite, he wasn't healthy, and now he has a healthy appetite. The other one says it's referring to opening the mouth below, that enables him to then have proper stools and be able to then not be constipated. V'chadamar, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, chadamar lahatir peh akrus. V'chadamar lahatir peh ilmim. One says it's referring to the opening up the mouth, referring to above, that refers to the mute, those who are mute, to allow them to be able to speak. The other one is referring to the one open the mouth below to allow a woman to become pregnant who wasn't able to have children before. The Gemara goes on to say that the Mishnah has stated there are lumasan bitzafon. There are those gates that are corresponding toward the southern gates of the Azara, the first of the northwestern side, was named Shar Yechanya. The Gemara discusses this. At Moitzei B'Shar Sha'ala Nebuchadnezzar Lakan. You find at the time that Nebuchadnezzar came to here, referring to Eretz Yisrael, Bo v'yashala b'doifni shel Atuchnia. He was residing in the area of Doifni shel Atuchnia, which is supposed to be a place in the region of Turkey. Yoitze Sanhedrin Gedol Lekrosoi. The Sanhedrin came out to greet him. V'amrola, they said to him, asking, Higiya Zman HaBayis Hazel Lichav, did you come to destroy our Beis HaMikdosh? Omar lehen, he said to them, Oisa sheimlachti aleichem tnu li v'ani holech. Give me the one who I made the king, Yechanya, and I will go on my way. I will not destroy the Beis HaMikdosh. Bo v'amru lehayochen melech Yehuda. It's another name for Yechanya. Nebuchadnezzar boy lochi wants you. Kivan sheshama mehen kach. Once Yechanya heard that Nebuchadnezzar wanted him, nota maftecha shel Beis HaMikdosh. He took the keys of the Beis HaMikdosh. Ola legago shel heichal. He went to the rooftops of the heichal. Omar lefonov, and he said the following: Ribono shel olam, l'sha'ovar hayinu ne'emanim lecha v'hayu maftechosecha mesurin lanu. Initially, we were loyal to you, and you gave us the keys of the Beis HaMikdosh. Achshav she'ein anu ne'emanim harei maftechosecha mesurin lecha. Now that we are not loyal to you, then the keys are given back to you. Train Amoraim. There are two different sages that explain these words. One says that Yechanya threw up the keys and they did not return, indicating that Mina Shamayim, they kept the keys and they were masking, they endorsed what he said. And one said that there was a hand, an image of a hand that came down and took it from the hands of Yechanya. Kivan Shero Kol Chorei Yehuda came on top of Yudzayin Beis. Once all of the noblemen of Yehuda, they saw that this is so, that Hashem does not want our avoida anymore. They went up to the rooftops. They then fell and died. That's what's meant by the pasuk. Masa gei chezayon, the prophecy of the valley of vision, referring to prophecy, the place of Hashem, Yerushalayim. Ma'aloch eifoi ki alis kuloch legagos. Why are all the people going up to the Gagos? Referring to the Chore Yehuda. Tishuois meleya ir humia. It says there's filled with commotion. The city that is of tumultness. In other words, they're going up to the Gagos, and instead of being killed, they're killing themselves. Chalila v'chas, knowing that the Beis HaMikdash was shortly going to be destroyed.